Good morning. Assalamu alaikum. Adab এবং নমস্কার. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues, and dear friends. It is my honor and privilege to welcome you to the Bay of Bengal Conversation 2024. In particular, I'm extremely honored to welcome the Chief Advisor of Bangladesh, Professor Dr. Muhammad Yunus, the Honorable Foreign Advisor of Bangladesh, Mr. Tawhid Hossain, the Chair of CGS, Ms. Munira Khan, and sitting with us in the audience, former heads of state such as Honorable Musa Mara, former Prime Minister of Mali, and Honorable Boris Tadic, former President of Serbia, who will be joining us shortly, as well as all the distinguished advisors, high commissioners, ambassadors, heads of missions, and former ministers and members of parliaments from all over the world. Standing here today, I can't help but reflect on how far this conference has come in such a short time. What started as a modest gathering of regional stakeholders has, in just 3 years, evolved into a forum of immense geopolitical significance in Asia and beyond. It is remarkable to see this transformation, a testament to the power of shared purpose and the urgent need for platforms like this one in an increasingly fractured world. The journey to this moment has not been without challenges. In the first 2 editions, we faced considerable roadblocks, particularly due to the autocratic political scenario that existed in Bangladesh at the time. Despite these hurdles, we persevered, fueled by the belief that open dialogue and collaboration could pave the way for progress, even in the most constrained circumstances. Those conferences, though modest in scale, laid the foundation for the impactful conversations we will have over the next 3 days. This year, we find ourselves in a very different context. The people of Bangladesh have spoken, and their voices have brought about profound change. Under the leadership of the interim government, our country is navigating a new path, one marked by a renewed commitment to democracy. For the first time, this conference is being held without the constraints of political suppression. And while this transition has left us with little time to prepare, the result is nothing short of extraordinary. The Bay of Bengal Conversation 2024 is shaping up to be leagues above our previous gatherings in terms of scope, significance, and the potential impact of the ideas we'll generate. The issues we are tackling over the next 3 days, freedom of the press, green energy and climate, global trade, geopolitics, and human rights, are not only regional challenges, but global imperatives. Bangladesh as a nation embodies the urgency and opportunity of these themes. As one of the most climate vulnerable countries in the world, we are emerging as a leader in climate adaptation and sustainable practices. As a rising economic force in South Asia, we are advocating for equitable trade policies that empower nations across the region. And as a nation committed to rebuilding its democratic institutions, we are demonstrating the resilience and resolve needed to protect the rights and freedoms of our citizens. But let me be clear, the conversations we'll have here are not just about Bangladesh or even the Bay of Bengal region. They are about the shared future of a deeply interconnected world. The challenges we face, whether misinformation, disinformation, fake news, hate speech, climate change, geopolitical instability, or the erosion of human rights, do not respect borders. Our responses must therefore be grounded in collaboration, multilateralism, and an unwavering commitment to the principles of democracy. This is why the Bay of Bengal conversation exists, to provide a platform where dialogue can transcend divisions, where ideas can inspire action, and where we can reaffirm our shared commitment to a world rooted in peace, justice, and sustainability. Now, it is my great privilege to introduce a few of our distinguished speakers who will set the tone for the conversations ahead. First, we have the honor of hearing from George Quiroga, former president of Bolivia and a full member of the Club de Madrid. President Quiroga has long been a champion of democracy and sustainable development, and his insights will undoubtedly enrich our discussions. While he cannot be with us in person due to the ongoing unrest in Bolivia, we are fortunate to have his speech delivered via video.
Hello, my name is Jorge Quiroga, former president of Bolivia. I'm speaking to you from La Paz, and I want to begin by sending my greetings to the organizers, the leaders, the authorities, the participants of the Bay of Bengal Conversation 2024 being held in Bangladesh. First of all, my apologies for not being there in person. In Bangladesh, you may understand something about a country mired in turmoil and difficulty. My nation is going through such a period of time. We're on day 21 of a nationwide blockade that is trying to unseat the government due to a political struggle inside the governing party, with all types of lawsuits and difficulties for the economy that is going through a very, very tough time. That requires me to be here in Bolivia, and I cannot be with you in Bangladesh. I'm sure you will understand that our countries sometimes go through turmoil on the way to a transition. And I wish I had been there to participate and to share in more detail the issues that we have together. Yes, you will be touching and broaching several subjects that are on the public discourse and the public debate everywhere. Global trade, I'm sorry to say that if you look at our friends in Europe and the US, they seem to be closed for commerce and trade. Mercosur, a bloc here in South America, has been queued up to negotiate a free trade agreement with the European Union for 25 years. The longest dating trade engagement ever without ever coming to a point where you have a wedding. You also understand that in the US Congress, it's almost impossible to get through any type of trade understanding. I think that requires us in the global South to look at how we can link up Latin America, Africa, Asia, and develop our own value-added chains if we find that the bigger economies are not open for business. You are also going to be touching on the geopolitical conflicts in the world. And yes, I'm sure Ukraine will get a lot of discussion, as it should, Slava Ukraini, and the conflicts in the Middle East, of course, which are heart-wrenching for many of us. That unfortunately means that difficulties or intractable issues in other parts of the world do not get the attention they deserve. I've mentioned one that's very near and dear to my heart. My friends in Venezuela just held an election in the midst of of dictatorial conditions without access to the media, and miraculously, they won the election by 37 points. And the government did a coup against the popular will expressed in that election, and it just wants to stay in power no matter what come January, when the new government is supposed to be sworn in. Unfortunately, the world's attention is diverted, and we don't have the focus that we need to in Venezuela. Hopefully, now that we're getting past the election cycle, we will have a new incoming government in the U.S., a new commission in the European Union. Perhaps they can focus on our part of the world and not just on the flashpoints that I mentioned at the beginning. Venezuela certainly needs it, and the path to democracy and liberty for Latin America runs through Venezuela. Had I been there, I would have shared in detail also the opportunities that we have in climate change. My country has 25% of the world's lithium reserves. We are destined, if we have a rational government with a right orientation, to be a major player in the world of clean energy with lithium batteries and watches and phones and tablets and cars and motorcycles, and to help the world be a better place for the future. We don't have to look very far here in La Paz to look at the effects of climate change. I climbed the mountains. I've been doing it for 30 years. The snow line where I climbed the Andean mountains is moved up 180 meters. That is not a mountaineering issue. That is a water supply issue. And we have to move on climate change. And my country can be a player not only on clean renewables, whether it's wind, solar, or the beautiful mountains with hydroelectric potential, but also because of the great lithium potential. And certainly you're all going to be touching on the issues of freedom of the press and human rights, which are under threat everywhere, including in my part of the world, especially in my region, in 3 countries, in Cuba, and Venezuela, and Nicaragua. And Venezuela will determine if we will be a hemisphere that respects and abides by democratic clauses that we signed up to, including the respect for a free, unfettered press and the respect for human rights that are being grossly violated in many of our nations. At any rate, lots of things that you will be discussing. I will not be personally with you, but I hope to make it up and be able to go sometime in the near future. I will close also by sending my best wishes to a very good friend, Muhammad Yunus. He's been given a great responsibility in the transition in Bangladesh. Perhaps a similar responsibility will be bestowed upon some friends of mine in Venezuela very soon. But we understand the challenges that Muhammad Yunus is facing, that Bangladesh has to work through in the next few months to make it a better place. We share many of the same opportunities and the difficulties that we have as countries. Some of those difficulties are unfortunately the ones that are preventing me from being with you personally, but I wish you all the best to the transition government in Bangladesh, and all the best to the Bay of Bengal Conversation Forum, and may you have the best of events and enjoy it. Please, my regards from La Paz, Bolivia, and my apologies again. Thank you so much.
Next, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce Mahathir Mohamad, former Prime Minister of Malaysia and one of Asia's most visionary leaders. Dr. Mahathir's perspectives on governance, economic resilience, and global cooperation have shaped the region and the world in profound ways. Unfortunately, he also could not join us as his health advisor suggested he doesn't travel the long way to Bangladesh. We are honored to hear his remarks, which will also be delivered via video.
Dr. Muhammad Yunus, Chief Advisor of the Interim Government of Bangladesh, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests and esteemed colleagues. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and may peace be upon you. I'm indeed honored to be invited to share some thoughts at this edition of the Bay of Bengal Conversation 2024. I was looking forward to sitting with all of you and be acquainted with those I have never met, and at the same time be reacquainted with friends. Unfortunately, I am unable to join you in person due to some unforeseen circumstances. Nevertheless, my thoughts are with all of you, and it is my greatest hope that this event will be able to put forth new thoughts and ideas and can be pursued for the betterment of mankind. Ladies and gentlemen, it would not be an exaggeration if we are to say that the world is in a state of turmoil. Well, in some parts of the globe, life seems to be normal, but we know that there is a strong undercurrent threatening to cause catastrophic upheaval globally. While the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict remains unresolved, it is the genocide committed by Israel on Palestinians which is most disturbing. The Israel genocide on Palestine is blatantly brutal and inhuman. It is totally unprecedented. But worse still, it proves that the rest of the world is important to stop the tragic decimation of a people. Secondly, all the international bodies which are supposed to protect the weak and the defenseless peoples and nations are equally important and incapable of performing their duties. Thirdly, it exposed the acute disunity among Muslim nations, with some leaders even prepared to ignore the plight of their Palestinian brothers and effectively aided the murderous Zionist regime. Finally, powerful nations in the West, the self-styled guardians of democracy, human rights, and freedom, reveal their fascist, racist, and bigoted nature as well as their hypocrisy for their support and aiding Israel in its occupation, ethnic cleansing, and destruction of Palestine and the genocides of the Palestinians. These nauseating lists can actually go on and on, but suffice to state that Israel, the rogue and pariah entity, had been able to conduct their atrocities with impunity because they are aided by these so-called great nations of the civilized world. Encouraged, the Israelis are not stopping with Palestine. It had ventured into Lebanon and now circling around Iran, playing victim all the time and affirmed by influential and powerful Western media. Swept aside are the numerous cross-border attacks and murders committed by Israel on those whose land they have seized and against whom they have oppressed for 70 years. Any attempt at retaliation by the oppressed are categorized as terror attacks. That Israel conducts state terrorism is ignored. It is the same script all over again, as we witnessed since October the 7th last year. The Hamas attack is a counter to the 70 years of oppression, but it is made out that it is a terror attack warranting massive genocide of men, women, children, and babies. Ladies and gentlemen, while Israel's genocide in Palestine and attacks on selected Middle Eastern nations is pushing the world to the brink of wider conflicts, the US is also busy provoking China into attacking Taiwan. The visit of Pelosi to Taiwan was deliberate in terms of increasing tension in the South China Sea. And of course, the sales of weapons by the US has shot up. It is not much different than the way the US and NATO provoked Russia into attacking Ukraine. Now the US will know the military capability of Russia. Poor Ukraine will be totally devastated. While not wanting to be an alarmist, I believe leaders of nations, the media, and civil societies should be speaking up vehemently against these provocations, lest we end up being caught in a war between the powerful nations. The collateral will obviously be the weaker ones. Ladies and gentlemen, speaking about the role of the press and media to help scale down the hostilities of these nations, it is unfortunate that influential publications which are from these nations tend to be jingoistic in their approach. They are actively contributing to the return of a bipolar world which we thought had ended together with the Cold War. Instead, the bipolarity caused by the US-China standoff is becoming all-encompassing given the flow of information, economic activities, and human movements. It is a conundrum, actually. The free flow of information and economic activities should actually contribute to a borderless world. Instead, it had led to sanctions which affect world trade and especially by countries which have nothing to do with the conflicts. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm fully aware that I have painted quite a bleak future, but I am a believer in speaking the truth and not mincing words. If we don't, then fake news will gain credence. That said, my faith in mankind was somewhat restored after the coronavirus pandemic. Prior to that, we had survived two great wars in which casualties were by the millions. Then we survived the pandemic, and the number of deaths ran into the millions too. While facing the pandemic, the world came together to end it, and yet, the minute the pandemic became less threatening, nations went into the belligerent mode yet again. My hope is that some sense would prevail, especially among the leaders of the powerful nations, that their belligerence would devastate nations, theirs included, and ultimately bring an end to mankind. Thank you. May Allah bless you all and for generations to come.
Thank you, Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad, and thank you, President George Quiroga. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to take up more time, but let me leave you with a final thought. The challenges we face today, from climate crisis to geopolitical tensions, are daunting, but they are not insurmountable. The path to healing a fractured world lies in democracy and dialogue. It is only through open conversation, mutual understanding, and a collective commitment to progress that we can build a future that is resilient, equitable, and just. This belief is the foundation of the Bay of Bengal conversation. Over the next 3 days, I urge each of you to engage fully, to share your insights and ideas, and to be part of the transformative dialogue that this forum seeks to inspire. Let us begin this journey together. Thank you all.